Welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. The headlines. African Union leaders back a force of thousands of regional troops to bring a halt to Boko Haram's reign of terror in Nigeria. In South Africa, the man known as Prime Evil is out of jail on parole. Apartheid-era death squad commander Eugene de Kock had been serving 2 life sentences for killing and maiming activists in the 80s and 90s. And over a month after floods brought death and destruction to Malawi, vast swathes of countryside there remain cut off, hampering relief efforts. We start with an update from the African Union summit in Addis Ababa. Leaders in the Ethiopian capital backing a force of thousands of troops to defeat Boko Haram in Nigeria. More than 13,000 people have been killed and over 1 million made homeless since the Islamist militants began their campaign of violence in 2009. Our correspondent Katerina Vitozzi has more.
At the end of day one of the AU summit here in Addis Ababa, we've seen the AU Commission take concrete steps towards creating a multinational military force to engage and fight the ongoing threat of Boko Haram in the northeast of Nigeria. These plans had been outlined at a strategic meeting on Thursday night, and they included the 5 countries around Lake Chad, that's Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, Niger, plus Benin, neighbouring Nigeria, to create a 7,500 strong military force, and they will go into northeastern Nigeria and really try and clamp down on the ongoing violence carried out by the Islamic insurgent group Boko Haram. A little earlier I spoke to the Nigerian Foreign Minister and asked him if he thought at last we were going to see some concrete steps towards peace.
I think the time of talking is over. I think it's time that we start acting, which we have already resolved to do, by really deciding to go ahead with the multinational joint task force to tackle the situation. And of course, as we go along, any kind of support and help that comes along is most welcome.
There are still a number of hoops to be jumped through, though, before this AU-backed strategy really does materialise in boots on the ground. The plan from here will now be sent to the UN Security Council. From there, it's hoped they'll receive financial backing, some more resources really to help the immense military effort that's going to have to take place in northeastern Nigeria in order to defeat this group, which has been plaguing the country for years, has resulted in the deaths of thousands and the kidnapping of many.
Katerina Vitozzi reporting there. Elsewhere, one of South Africa's most notorious apartheid-era assassins has been released on parole in Pretoria. Eugene de Kock was sentenced to 2 life terms and 212 years in prison for his role in the police death squad that targeted anti-apartheid activists during the 1980s and 90s. The Justice Minister who authorised his release said he was placing de Kock on parole in the interests of nation building and reconciliation. France 24's Thomas Waterhouse has more.
After serving 20 years in prison and after years of deliberation and deferrals, on Friday a decision was finally reached about the fate of one of South Africa's most notorious assassins.
In the interest of nation building and reconciliation, I have decided to place Mr. de Kock on parole.
Better known by his nickname Prime Evil, Eugene de Kock ran his counter-insurgency police unit, the notorious Black Plus Death Squad, from this farm on the outskirts of Pretoria, a group that targeted black anti-apartheid leaders and activists over 2 decades. In 1994, as Nelson Mandela became the country's first black president, de Kock was arrested. And in front of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee set up the following year, he confessed to hundreds of acts of fraud, torture and murder. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 212 years in prison. Said to be a model inmate, de Kock expressed remorse for his crimes in jail and helped authorities locate the remains of some of his victims. But despite his good behaviour in prison, opinion is still divided over his release.
The justice system is corrupt from the very top, and even though we feel it's wrong that they're letting him out because he killed people and others disappeared, there's nothing we can do.
Forgiveness is where everything has to start, and when people have paid for their crimes and they are remorseful, I think it's very, very good start to actually continue for the future.
With tensions still high over the crimes of the former white minority regime, de Kock has requested that the date and conditions of his release should not be made public.
Ivory Coast next, and growing concern over a series of grisly discoveries. Over the last 2 months, around 20 children have been kidnapped and later found dead. Most of their bodies were mutilated. Extra police have been sent out on patrol in response to this spate of killings, with worried parents fearing many may have been the result of ritual killings. Our correspondent sent this report from the country's main city, Abidjan.
In this neighbourhood, children are not in school. Their mothers have come looking for them. One by one, they inspect the cars.
We are searching because they hide the children.
These women are afraid.
They're killing children. They're taking children. We don't know where to go. We're tired.
I'm troubled. My youngest child, when he hears the sound of a car, he is troubled.
We are calling on authorities to find a solution. We are tired of crying. It cannot continue.
Rumours of kidnappings spread fast, but they're often false alarms. Police say 21 children have been abducted over the last few months. Only one was found alive. Many of them were mutilated and left without body parts. 2 months ago, it happened to this woman's son. She's too frightened to be identified.
At around 6 in the evening, we realized the child had disappeared. We alerted everyone. We started looking for him. 10 days later, they called me to tell me they had found a child's body at the water's edge, without his head, without his right foot, and other parts of his body.
Police say they have no proof that any of these crimes are linked, but they are using the term ritual killings.
You have these ritual crimes, and we know very well the type of criminal who commits them in other countries. It's people who believe that through these crimes they may have power or money, easy money. We have a few leads and have increased our surveillance in all these areas.
1,500 police and soldiers have been deployed to patrol danger areas, but it's failed to calm people's fears. On Thursday, an innocent man was beaten.
Next to the floods which have brought death and devastation to southern Africa. It's been over a month now since they struck Malawi. There, vast sections of the countryside remain cut off, leaving thousands of refugees stranded with little access to food and medical care. Laurent Berstecher reports.
Trapped by water, several villages have become islands and are only accessible by boat or helicopter. It's been over a month since torrential rains in Malawi created heavy flash floods that have affected over 600,000 people. But 8 agencies and NGOs are only beginning their relief effort, an operation that has been stalled by the persistence of floodwaters.
What we have seen, particularly since the water has receded, is the huge difficulty to access many of these populations.
Doctors also feared that the unsanitary conditions and overcrowding of refugee villages may cause an outbreak of diseases.
The risk now, and the main concern, is the risk of epidemic. It's an area that is prone to malaria, and it's also an area that we are worried about measles, and the conditions are gathered for all of these potential outbreak to happen.
Makanga village has become one of those refugee islands, cut off from the rest of the country. But amidst the dreadful conditions faced by their survivors, there is hope. After spending 4 days stranded in a tree, Berita Cheleni gave birth to a little girl with the help of a member of Doctors Without Borders.
Of course, I'm glad to have my baby, but we still have big problems. We don't have food, we don't have clean water, and we don't have any clothing.
These were the worst floods to have hit Malawi since 1991. So far, over 170 people have been killed, and an estimated 200,000 more were displaced.
Finally, to football's Africa Cup of Nations. France Van Kat's Ketefan Gorgestani is following the action for us in Equatorial Guinea. She has more on Tunisia's prospects in the quarter-finals after they surprised many by winning their group.
Final training session for the Tunisians as they prepare for their quarterfinal against Equatorial Guinea. The North Africans have been growing stronger throughout these group stages, finishing top of their Group D with Belgian coach Georges Likens at their head. They have yet to lose a single official match, and with that experience, they're the obvious favorites of these quarterfinals. But that's a status that they'd rather play down.
No, I don't like the word favorite. There are no favorites. We're here to give it our best, and we'll see what happens. I don't think there are any favorites in the quarterfinals. There are 8 strong teams that are equal. We'll just give it our all and hope to go through.
Equatorial Guinea and its many amateur players will be looking to continue their fairy tale run in this competition. And for that, they'll be counting on a capacity crowd here at Estadio de Bata. That's after the game was moved from the tiny arena in the east of the country in Ebebin. And that's no problem for the Tunisians, who admit it. They'd rather play in front of a hostile but full stadium rather than an empty one.
That's it for Eye on Africa. Do stay with us here on France 24. Claire Murphy will be here with the world news very shortly.
Beyond Business.
In December, a Chinese-Canadian group bought nearly 50% of Toulouse Airport, one of France's most profitable hubs. Some have said selling key assets such as infrastructure is too risky. Are these fears founded, or are the critics merely being alarmists? Answer in the next edition of Beyond Business.
Beyond Business, en France 24, en France24.com.